Trojan fans. Welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined alongside Mr. Triple Double himself, Connor Morrissette. We're talking about the USC Trojans, 2-1 on the season, going into week 2 of their Big Ten conference schedule, hosting Wisconsin this weekend. Of course, coming off the very disappointing loss to the Michigan Wolverines in the Big House over the weekend, 27-24. We're going to talk about all that, what's been going on at practice this week, what Lincoln Riley's been saying, the story, non-story about Bear Alexander and how much playing time he's getting, all that stuff we're going to get to. If you have any questions or comments for us on the show, send us an email. That's the best way. Podcast at uscfootball.com. Let us know for the main show, the Ryan and Connor show, and we'll put it up there for you when you send those questions in. You can also call or text us at 424-254-9141. And if you have the Apple Podcasting app, you can follow us and leave us a 5-star rating and review there. Also on the Spotify app, if you have that, you can leave us a 5-star rating. No review, though. We love the reviews. If you have a chance to send us one of those, we appreciate it. Let me see if we got any new ones. I don't think so, but I'll check real quick. I'm sorry. But welcome in, Connor. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. Tough loss against Michigan, of course. We've talked a lot about it on Tunnel Vision, and this week I like how we do the Wednesday show. We can kind of finish our thoughts on last week's game and then get into the next game. USC will welcome Wisconsin, of course, this weekend. 14 points favorite. USC is a 14-point favorite. That line opened up on Sunday. I don't know if it's changed a little bit here or there, but again, USC should certainly win, and an opportunity for them to get back on track against a Wisconsin team that has a backup quarterback, a decent defense, I'd say, but a really winnable game for USC, of course, as a double-digit favorite. And I'm excited to see how the Trojans, especially on that offensive line, respond on Saturday.
I'm as well. And thanks, everyone, for being in the chat there. We appreciate you coming in. If you're watching us live on the YouTube channel, yeah, it's great. My microphone is cutting out a little bit. I will listen, I don't know. I just did some. I might move over to the channel or stuff. But we are live on YouTube. I'm going to play with the microphone. I'll let Connor talk for a second. But if you do want to get in the chat, you can do so and put your comments in there, and we'll put them up on the screen. If you have questions, we'll put them in there as well. The emojis do not show up on the screen. So we put a lot of people that fight on emojis. Sorry, those don't pop up. So if you're going to be talking in only emojis, we had Section 216, row 5, just put a fight on emoji. That won't show up on the screen. So sorry about that. So just do the regular stuff. But Connor, man, I guess give it up. I'm going to switch my microphone.
Yeah, I can give an opening take maybe.
Yeah, give an opening take.
My favorite sports radio show. That's how they start. So to me, I think as I rewatched that USC-Michigan game, I go back to some of the issues with Lincoln Riley's play calling in that game. I thought specifically when USC got into the red zone for the first time after Miller Moss connected with Zachariah Branch, and ultimately USC settles for a field goal. The play calling when they got into the red zone wasn't great. The drive at the end of the first half I didn't think was great when points were really at a premium for USC. They need 10 yards to get into Michael Lance's field goal range, and Lincoln Riley dials up that trick play to Kyron Hudson. If it wasn't tipped, then it probably would have worked out with the pass interference that would have been called on Jacoby Lane. But again, that one doesn't work, and I felt like, did you really need to dial that up? I know USC was kind of desperate at that point, but 10 yards, there are a lot easier ways to get 10 yards, and then you probably get a field goal in that situation where points, like I said, were at a premium. And then, of course, with 5 minutes left, USC gets the ball to potentially ice the game. They're not able to do it. So I hear a lot of people frustrated with Riley and frustrated with the offensive line, of course, but it's a mixture of both. And I think in those instances where the play calling wasn't really as good for Riley, it wasn't like the offensive line was giving the team much of a chance. And you could point to instances where, okay, the play call maybe wasn't great, but the play never even had a chance, even if it wasn't the ideal call because of some mistakes from the offensive line. And after watching that game back, I mean, man, you feel for a guy like Elijah Paige, who didn't even really feel like he was hearing the snap count at the end of that first half. So that was tough. And I just wonder how this group is going to respond because, yes, Michigan is really good, but Arkansas State, Texas, Fresno State, like their offensive lines, Texas is elite, but Arkansas State's and Fresno State certainly is not. Those units played a hell of a lot better than USC, and Michigan had a big chip on their shoulder. I understand it, but, man, to see that performance in that spot certainly doesn't make you feel good about the line. It's going to be the toughest spot for USC, I think, so they should improve in that area. But just how bad it was sort of makes you think, okay, is this a unit that they don't get better? Could this be an issue that happens all season long? I think they will get better, but it's tough to really feel good about that when the offensive tackles were just terrible in that game.
They were bad, and we even talked about how the short yardage running, as far as like the LSU game, they weren't very good at that either, and they needed to kind of use the intermediate passing game to set up the run. So there were some concerns there early on. The problem was Michigan did not rush the passer well in their first 3 games, and man, they got home against USC. So certainly some concerns there. USC probably won't face the same kind of caliber of defensive linemen going forward, but that would be something to be concerned about. Get a lot of comments in the chat, and hopefully this sounds better. It's funny, I switched. We had some like microphone issues. My microphone was fine. I fixed a couple other ones, and then mine started not working right. So I'll work on that one too.
Sounds much better now.
Yeah. Sager says, "What's up, gents? Trader Joe's, great weather today, and Inside Troy giving us their insight. Yeah, we're doing our best, and we do want to thank Trader Joe's. I went there yesterday, Connor, to pick up some stuff. My buddy Mike, who works for the Lakers, we're having a few like kind of Lakers peeps over the house tonight, and I'm going to make some ceviche and some margaritas, but I went and got all my citrus, limes, lemons, oranges over at Trader Joe's. They got a really good selection of chips, so I got some corn chips you can use to dip into the ceviche, but they had like the fresh veggies I needed, like red onion and jalapenos, and some cherry tomatoes and stuff. So I'm going to make a nice ceviche with the stuff I got over at Trader Joe's, and maybe some of those Dunker chocolate chip cookies that I like so much you can kind of do afterwards. Maybe that's not for the guests. Maybe that's just for me later. But
hide them in the closet.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, some good stuff over there. A lot of whatever you want. Like a lot of times I'm picking up snacks, but when you need a bunch of like fruits and vegetables or whatever, if you're making some kind of dinner, obviously go over to Trader Joe's. They got everything you need. I love going over there. So thanks again to Trader Joe's. And they're funny. They gave us a bunch of gift cards for a podcast with champions.
Oh.
Yeah. So
a lot of gift cards.
John is a big fan of our show, and then also the podcast of champions where we talk about Big Ten football. And he said before the UCLA LSU game, he's like, I'll send you, he was going to send me a bunch of gift cards to give away for people. And he was going to base it on how many points UCLA scored. So we were thinking it was going to be like 10, but they're 17. So I just got them today, like $17 gift cards for Trader Joe's. We'll give away to people that leave positive reviews. So yeah, it's fun.
Nice, a little incentive there to leave a good review. You get a $17
He's great.
gift
He's
card.
really involved in the shows and loves all the football
stuff. It was
It's
great meeting him last month. Awesome guy.
Yeah. All right. I got to catch up to see what was in the chat and everything. But if you have questions, I'll star them and get to them later. But we have a few different topics. We're not going to kind of rehash the whole Michigan game. We kind of talked about that stuff a little bit, but just coming out of that, I just did a hit for CBS that'll go up a little bit later. And one of the things I brought up, Connor, was there is a lot of positivity, and sometimes coaches
absolutely
have to do it.
And I think my opening rant, I kind of was picking on Riley and the offensive line there. Like, the defense is going to give you a chance to win like they did against Michigan every single week.
Yeah,
and Miller Moss,
that travels.
I was blown away by how well he played under pressure in that game. Last season, Caleb Williams, when he was under pressure, he did not play very well, and we wrote extensively about it. It was a real issue with a not-so-good offensive line. Miller Moss, with a tough offensive line performance against Michigan, hangs in there, completes 10 of 20 passes, 2 touchdowns. I think he was like 121 yards. He didn't have any turnover-worthy plays when he was under pressure in that one because the sack that was on him, that was Tobias Raymond messing up, so Pro Football Focus didn't put that on Miller. I talked about the offensive line to start just because that was probably the most glaring, and that's what has been the big talking point this week, Riley's play calling as well. But defensively, USC was really good for the most part in that game. Miller Moss, I thought, after rewatching the game, the pick six wasn't great, but everything else that he did in that game, how he maneuvers in the pocket when he really didn't have a lot of time, that stood out to me. I still think USC's in a great spot after this Michigan defeat, and I think you feel the same, Ryan.
Yeah, no, I think the positivity there, and I mean, when you look at what this USC defense was able to do, I mean, people, and even the hit I just did, where Nick, who covers Wisconsin, was saying, like, USC having trouble with the run. I mean, there were 3 plays that were bad, and those were bad plays. But what did Lincoln Riley say? Like 43 of the 46.
Yeah, we played them like bosses.
Yeah, but bosses, and they did. I mean, if you look at the drive chart to start the second half. 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, fumble on the first play, 3 and out. And it's like, when you don't get a first down until 2 minutes left in the game, like you went, 28 minutes without getting a first down, you can't ask for much more, from that for the defense. And so there were a couple of mistakes. Unfortunately, the mistakes were killer mistakes. I don't see that being the case all the time. So I think there's some positives that come away from it. It does put more pressure on you to win. You got to win this game against Wisconsin. There's going to be tough ones. And I think Riley talked about this being like a C game, and they still had a chance to win. I think you could have played that way and beat Wisconsin or Minnesota. Probably not, Notre Dame or Penn State or things like that, and maybe Nebraska. We'll see. But the fact that you didn't play your best game and were still in it and had a chance to win, I think it's positive. But you got to get to that. You got to play. You got to play better than your C game coming off a bye week. I know it's a tough road environment and all that. And so it's going to be up to USC to play better, to play B-ball or better. And if they do, I think they're going to do well through the schedule. So my biggest question now is, can USC get up for it? You have to get these guys up for each and every week for different circumstances. For whatever reason, it just didn't work against Michigan. Can you bounce back and play well against Wisconsin? I think the good thing is ABC, whatever, like the defense played, they were there. They were ready to play. The offensive line, as bad as we've seen in years, I don't know. It was really terrible. So, I think there's some positives there, but it does put pressure on this team to perform up to, closer to their standard that they didn't play to in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, what's frustrating is that Michigan game, like they had it. They had that one in the bag. When USC got the ball with 5 minutes left, they could have iced the game. And then when they do give the ball back to Michigan, they're one play away from winning that game. I totally agree with what you're saying there, Ryan. And if the offensive line can be better, which I really think it can, it's never a good argument to say, well, we're not going to play someone as tough as Michigan, so we'll be fine. Like, you still need to make improvements, and they will. But Wisconsin, looking ahead to USC's next game, like they have no one close to Khalil Mullings in their backfield. They have no one even close to Donovan Edwards in their backfield, in my opinion. It's been a running back by committee approach for them. Their offensive line is pretty solid, but it's not like there's one bell cow running back like Mullings who, okay, this guy you really got a game plan for and stop. USC's defense, I think, is going to give Wisconsin a really hard time with their backup quarterback, Braden Locke. They have one receiver you got to worry about, and Will Pauling, a slot guy. So as long as USC covers him well, there really isn't someone else on that offense from a weapons perspective where you really have to worry about them. And with Michigan, they had the one big weapon in Mullings, and he was just really, really good on his day. I don't know if Wisconsin has anyone who can replicate that. I really don't think they do. I think we'll see a great performance from USC's defense, and Wisconsin's defense just isn't as good as Michigan, so I expect a bounce-back performance from the USC offense in this one as well. If the offensive line can get developed and you can get that best five and give yourself a chance in some of these road games coming up, then USC still should be in a good spot. The only big takeaway that I had from like a glaring weakness perspective, Ryan, is I didn't really think USC had a glaring weakness heading into the Michigan game, and now it's like on the road, what does your offensive line look like? That's totally a fair question after what those offensive tackles and what some other guys on that line did against Michigan.
No, I agree. And I think there's a lot of positives in this one. Wisconsin, I don't think is a very good team. We've seen them play superior athletes, and I like Luke Fickell. It's just not working that well. And I didn't even realize this until it did that CBS hit. And they were talking about, they wanted me to follow up with, Tyler Van Dyke's injury, and Nick was talking about it. And I was like, why do you want me to follow up on that? But they were like, how do you react? And I was like, oh, by the way, and I just thought of it, like USC's played backup quarterbacks 3 weeks in a row, right? Or 3 games in a row, because you had to play Bryson Barnes, the backup for Utah State. Alex Orji he's playing. He was the backup because Davis Warren got benched. And then now with the Tyler Van Dyke injury, you're seeing Locke, another backup. So it's like kind of 3 weeks in a row of backups. Last week was more of a decision. The other ones have been injuries. But I think, USC's handle it. Maybe you don't have as much tape on it. So I don't know if that's a positive or not. You're just kind of used to not seeing these guys as much. Like you mentioned, he's played a similar role and he's come in before, but hasn't been a great passer. I see this as like kind of an overmatched opponent. And I don't think USC is at an Alabama level athlete-wise, but I would, that would be a closer comp than whoever else Wisconsin has played. And they pretty much got boat raced at home by 31 points or whatever it was. I think USC is going to handle business in this one too. So, but you got to play well. I think just like I said with Michigan, just play your game, play well. USC didn't do that. They didn't play well for half the game. It cost them. You play well in this one, half the game, you're probably okay. But 3/4 of the game, you like to play your game, and I think USC will be okay.
Wisconsin can certainly punish USC if they're not ready to go, and the offensive line looks like it did last week. It's not like it's going to be a cakewalk game, but I totally agree with you, Ryan. It's a game USC should win. Again, you're favored by 14 points. That's just not a spot where you lose. So unless something crazy happens and it's a game into the fourth quarter, I just don't see it going that way. And the USC defense, like who on this Wisconsin offense are you really nervous about outside of that receiver, Will Pauling? So I'm totally with you on that. I think it's a good spot for USC to exercise some demons, take out its frustration at home against a Wisconsin team that just is probably a little overmatched. Like I said, though, to start this point, if USC doesn't have its A game, they do play that B or C level sort of game. Wisconsin's defense is good enough to slow down the USC offense, and I think it would be a tractor pull, sort of like 9-7 lower scoring game. But if USC executes better on offense, we see the offensive line take a step forward. Woody Marks and Quentin Joyner continue to run at a high level, and the receivers take a step forward. It sounds like it's a lot of ifs that need to happen, but I think it's all things that are realistic. USC should take care of business. Just the defense against that Wisconsin offense, there really isn't anyone you have to be afraid of. It's a backup quarterback. Locke doesn't turn the ball over, so if it does turn into a tractor pull game, that is probably something that helps Wisconsin a little bit. But on paper, it's a matchup USC should win by a few touchdowns.
Yeah, a lot of comments I've been putting up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. But Guy says, tell it like it was. The OL is terrible.
I started the show.
Have we said anything outside? No, we've said they were awful. PFF, those grades, you can't really – but you can't put so much stock into it. But to get an 8 with the lowest grade they've ever recorded with a 30, like you're way below the lowest grade they've ever had. That just tells you enough that like that was as bad as you could possibly play. And like you said, looking at what Miller Moss was able to do, I mean, literally, it's like one of those things where you're like, you're giving chicken shit and making chicken salad. Like he basically did what as good as good. Yeah,
some good chicken salad. And with the offensive line, I thought Antonio Morales had a good story in his like follow up after the Michigan game, not his initial game story, which I thought was great too. He said two things can be true. Clay Helton didn't do a good enough job leaving Lincoln Riley in the USC program with good offensive line depth outside of that first year. The starters were good, but there wasn't really a whole lot after them. And USC under Riley still hasn't recruited well enough. And both things are certainly true. And I hear people on the board talk all about how good offensive lines, those guys need to be playing in their third and fourth years. USC relying on guys in their second years isn't good enough. And by and large, that's true. Ideally, you have guys in the system for a couple years, and they're not playing until their third and fourth years. But if you recruit at a really high level, there are examples in college football where you bring in really good guys on the offensive line, and they're playing early. Look at Caden Proctor at Alabama, Texas. They've had a couple guys who have played a lot earlier. Josh Connerly, who was so close to picking USC, he was Oregon's starting left tackle in his second year. So there are examples in college football where you bring in those blue chip guys, and again, ideally, you're not playing them until an offensive lineman until their third or fourth year. But there's examples. If you recruit at a high level, guys can come in and make a really positive impact. And USC just hasn't been able to do that. Yeah,
the recruiting failures that's starting to show up, but a lot of that was recruiting failures from Helton too. But you've had your chances, and Oregon was just eating your lunch when it comes to some of those guys. So they filled up with the portal year one. They tried it year two, didn't work as well. Now you're kind of relying on in-home talent, and I think you needed, Chris Trevino talks about that. You needed to bring in a big tackle from the portal. So those are the past mistakes that now are kind of rearing their head. It's like the analogy I always use is like you don't pay your parking tickets. Like the first one is fine. The 10th one, you get a boot on your car. And this was sort of like, hey, you didn't recruit good offensive linemen for this year. Guess what happened? Now they brought in bodies the last couple of years, but they lacked that signature, the 5-star blue chip guy coming in. So could Elijah Paige, you thought he could have been that guy. And then
he still can.
He still can, but he ends up getting benched in that game. And I think you had a tweet where maybe it was Ryan Karchi that tweeted something about Lincoln Riley had said that, it was like a rest thing, and you're like, he played on special teams in the second half. It wasn't rest or whatever.
He said it was cramps and he wasn't available, and I had rewatched the game this morning, and I was like, okay, I think the backup left tackle usually plays the left tackle position on the extra point, and after USC had scored, oh, there's 72 jogging on. So I don't fault Riley for telling a little white lie there. He wants to back his guy. That's just how he's always been. He's not he's not the kind of guy, like even when Bear Alexander, who I know we're gonna talk about here in a little bit, even when he wasn't doing what Riley wanted to do, he like challenged him, but he never went fully out of his way to be like, Bear just needs to play better. It's always, he missed the spring, we want to see a little bit more from him. And with Elijah Paige, it wasn't like he just needs to be better. It was he was hurt, and that's why we benched him. So what I'm trying to say is he's made excuses for guys in the past when just they haven't been playing well enough or doing well enough, and that's just how Riley is, and that's how a lot of football coaches are. People have messaged me privately on our site and been like, why don't you trust the coaching staff sometimes? Football coaches are just notorious liars. A lot of times they're not going to tell it like it is.
No, 100%. Yeah, if you have cramps, you can't get to the game, but you can get on like special teams. Shotgun pointed out too that there were some
that was ugly.
Some old special teams gaffes, like at least one play with 12, one or two plays with 10.
The one they blocked, Gavin Meyer blocked, there were only 10 guys out there.
They only had 10, yeah, and I think the announcer actually said something, or maybe it was a different guy. I remember
they on the broadcast they came back later after a few breaks and were like, hey, by the way, USC only had 10.
And they still made the play on that one. So interesting. Yeah, that was certainly interesting. I think there was another special teams gaff that they had.
Yeah, they had 2 44s on one play.
Oh, yeah.
They had 12 on another. That was disappointing to see, just because the whole bye week, Riley on Trojans Live said we're emphasizing special teams. Then I asked him, what about special teams can you get better on? And he mentioned the punt return unit on Thursday, but I didn't think that was particularly good against Michigan. It seemed like that was a big emphasis, and then to come out and have the special teams performance that they did. No missed kicks, luckily, but just not having the right alignment, not having the right guys out there. It kind of goes back to the offensive line, too, because we asked everyone, hey, a lot of these players are in their first true road game starts. Like, how do you prepare for that? And Riley just said reps. But it's different when you throw a pick six and then you got to defend the extra point right away. Like, you can't really replicate that in practice, because in practice, okay, they throw a pick six. Now everyone run out. We're doing the extra point. In the game, it's like there's no preparation for that.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true. Yeah, there's I thought the special teams had played well. Now, Michigan's punter was like Iowa's punter last year. I mean, he had punted so many. I mean, he put USC deep. It's just a lot of things sort of had to happen for that to go right. But I love the way that USC's been punting the ball. Yeah. I think the return stuff has not been great. But this is significantly better special teams play than previous years. And I know people want to get the big return, but we've seen so many of those that come up short of the 25. I'd say just fair catch it and you're okay. Like, they're not making big mistakes. I think they're probably missed some opportunities to try to make a big play. And Lincoln Riley mentioned that with one of the, like there was at least one punt return. There wasn't anyone near him and he calls fair catch. I think maybe it was a short kickoff, same kind of thing. But I don't have as big of an issue with that. I just wanted things to be buttoned down and just keep it neutral, so you're not giving up big advantages, 20 yards here, 15 yards there. And they're doing a really good job flipping the field and in the kicking game. So, I'm pretty happy with special teams.
Me too. Every kickoff seemingly is going for a touchback. Eddie Chaplicki's been way better than he was last year punting the ball. I think he leads the nation in like punting yards or something. USC tweeted it. He's been awesome. Every time he kicks it, it seems like the return person has to go back because he's kicking it so far. So they did have a few mistakes, but I don't think it's stuff that's the end of the world.
Yeah. Trojan fight. Connor with the fire pointing out Elijah Paige played on special teams in the second half. We're not we're not trying to like crush anybody or call anyone. I mean, especially with the players and stuff. We're just trying to let you know. I mean, sometimes coaches will say things and they're trying to be protective, which is totally fine. But there's also, we watched the game. There's video of this, and like he was in the game. So, it's okay to get benched sometimes. He's a redshirt freshman. Yeah. It's like, it's okay. He's a mammoth of a man. I think he'll bounce back. But you can't blame the coaches for trying to protect him.
And this is a guy who last year got demoted to scout team, which that's not a public embarrassment. That's only something on the team sees. But he was on the 2 deep. He was a backup. And then for whatever reason, he wasn't doing well enough, goes down to scout team, and then he earns the starting left tackle job. So, of course, it's different in the big house. 6 million people, it peaks at 10 million people on cable. Like, a lot of people saw him make these mistakes, and then he gets benched. So it was way more public than getting demoted to scout team. But he responded really well to getting demoted to scout team. And this is life. It's football. Like, everything doesn't go your way all the time, and I think he has a great chance to bounce back and learn from this. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's licking his wounds this week, but it's football. Nothing's perfect, and I still think he's a good player, and he has a chance to bounce back for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, you did get to talk to some of the players yesterday, offensive players available after USC practice. If you haven't checked out instant analysis, the guys did some after the game with Jack Smith. You can check it out. And today they'll have it again out there after practice. But what were some of the takeaways from practice yesterday? We'll get to the one big, like kind of the big one that Lincoln Riley was talking about with the, we'll give you a hint. We'll do that one a little bit later, but just some of the players. I know like Woody Marks talked and Miller Moss and stuff. What kind of did you hear out there?
I really liked how Miller Moss said Sunday night he texted Tobias Raymond and just said he was really proud of him for stepping up and playing right tackle when Elijah Paige went to the bench and Mason Murphy switched over. I continue to be really impressed with Moss's leadership and just his play. I felt like the Holiday Bowl, that was an awesome game, but I wasn't really sure how much Moss could keep that up. And you're not going to throw for 6 touchdowns every game, so I'm not saying that. But he just looked so good in that game, and I wondered when will he hit adversity. And he threw the pick 6 against Michigan, didn't have the perfect game. But that was a spot where, like, people who weren't as prepared and just weren't as talented, like quarterbacks in that position, really would screw up, I think. And Moss played so well. And I asked him, like, a lot of people in your position who hadn't started a true road game before, who did face that much pressure, wouldn't be able to do as well. Like, what do you attribute your success to? And he just talked about how he felt like he prepared and he gave 110% to his preparation. He has no regrets about how he prepared for that game. And I just think you're in really good hands with Miller Moss. Does he have that Caleb Williams, number 1 overall pick ceiling? No, but I was listening to the Pro Football Focus grades release show, and both of their analysts were talking about how Moss, it might not be a first-round pick, and it still could certainly be a first-round pick, but that Michigan game showed them that he for sure has an NFL future, and as we just see Miller play more and more, I see that as well. And that was something coming into this season I wasn't really sure. Okay, like I know Miller's going to do a nice job, but what's his ceiling? And he just keeps getting better and better, in my opinion.
No, I think he's been really good,
Yeah.
and I think you want someone that can lead your team. It's going to be different than the way the team was led. I mean, I think if you take the 2023 team and put it in Arbor last weekend with Caleb Williams, they get blown out.
It looks like Notre Dame, I think.
Yeah, I think it looks a lot like that. And
well, especially with the defense.
yeah, no, that's the big thing. But I think even like if Caleb Williams was on this team,
Yeah.
I think he would have. Maybe he does a little bit better of a job. But
he was terrible under pressure last year. The numbers,
he wasn't that good.
It's a small sample size, but what Miller's doing under pressure through 3 games is a lot better than what Caleb Williams did last season.
Yeah.
And I think as the year goes on, that's going to be something that we should look at, or continue to look at.
Woody Marks has to continue to be a fan favorite. When we spoke at the Trojan Coaches Club, and a lot of people, now we had him on Tunnel Vision too, and it was great. And you hear the story about why he's called Woody, and just the most genuine, kid from Mississippi that's like in the big city and couldn't be nicer to everyone. And when he got up in front of all those people back in August, everyone comes up to us and like, oh my God, we're going to be rooting for him so hard. I'm like, he's going to be your starting running back. And he's performed better than expected. Did he get 100 yards this last game?
On the nose, 100 exactly.
yards. Yeah. And after like getting nothing in the first half, broke that big one. Of course, the strip of the football was amazing. It's just cool to see him, and USC's been really lucky, 3 years in a row getting these veteran, likable, high-performing transfer running backs, and each year, and he's the next one. But he's been really impressive to me so far.
Certainly, USC didn't really run block that well either against Michigan, but Mark still broke that 65-yard run in the third quarter, and then later in that drive, stripping Kenneth Grant of the ball. What an incredible play. His versatility really stands out, how talented he is as a pass catcher, in addition to how he runs the ball. And he's different than Marshawn Lloyd, but he's having that same impact where he comes right in and is a huge part of this USC offense. I wrote in the PFF grade story that I did today, I don't think it's particularly close. Maybe Zachariah Branch, but I think Woody Marks is pretty clearly the best weapon on this team through 3 games. What he's been able to do has been really, really impressive, especially with an offensive line that is still getting up to speed. He is certainly a fan favorite. Talking to him makes people really love him, but if you continue to make plays like strip sacking a guy on a play that was disastrous for USC, getting the ball back, I mean, that game, it's probably not over if Michigan goes on to keep the ball there, but USC's in a world of trouble, and just what he did there was amazing. Guy is a winner. Guy is likable. A real success story from the transfer portal, which is always cool to see.
Yeah. I'm going to put this up here. I'm not really happy about it, but USC football for life. Woody Marks makes a great play stealing the ball back, but let's not forget, he helped cause the original football by Moss.
That was Tobias Raymond. I thought watching that play, I didn't think Tobias Raymond played very well. Was Marks in the vicinity, and could he have helped a little bit more? But I think if Tobias Raymond plays that better, then I look at it differently, and maybe some people will feel differently. He was there; he could have helped, but that was more Tobias Raymond, I thought, than Woody
He's
Marks.
the reason you had a 1st and goal at the 2. He didn't false start and then put you back at the 7, and then put you in these weird situations. Like USC should have scored a touchdown there. That was a gritty run. That was longer than any Michigan run. Was that a 68-yarder? What did he have?
I think it was 65.
Yeah, so longer than any Michigan run. I mean, he was, and to be shut out like that and then kind of break through, I'm not giving him any of the blame. Sorry. But yeah, it was pretty impressive. That was a heads up play. He knew the defensive tackle was too big for him to tackle, so he took the ball away, and that was pretty impressive. So love that. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about from practice, or we should move on to
we can talk about that. I was just rewatching the play. Stort makes a great play. Could Marks have done a little bit better? Yeah, but if Tobias Raymond just blocks his guy better, then we're not even having this conversation.
Yeah.
So I get the comment. It's football. Nothing, we see it differently. He could have done more, but
he's the reason you were at the 2.
Exactly.
And then you had to go back to the 7 because of screw up. He's still performing while other people around him are screwing up. That's hard to do sometimes, where you're like, hey, I'm at my A game, and then like everyone else around you screw it up, and you're like, okay, I'm going to keep doing my A game. It's like, that's not easy but that play was absolutely redonkulous. I wouldn't look at a potential missed block earlier. Like, no, I'm not going there. Sorry, don't even mean or anything, but we got to talk some Bear Alexander. I know it's not a story because
well, it's just not good when Bear's father, his guardian, I don't exactly know the correct term because it's his legal father, his legal guardian, not his biological father, is on Twitter just going after USC fans. And he was provoked a little bit, but you got to put the social media away. And I can let you set the table, Ryan, before I kind of get into it here.
I don't mind if you want to. It's just so we've seen what. Okay, let's go back to mid-August. We're watching a scrimmage in the Coliseum, and we are not allowed to say anything that's going on in the scrimmage. We're not allowed to talk about the plays that are going on. We see kind of what you guys are seeing now. There was a heavy rotation on the defensive line, but Nate Clifton and Gavin Meyer were the interior starters. And we interviewed Nate Clifton on this, on Tunnel Vision, and he told us there, I mean, I think that was where everyone found out about it over the summer or whatever, that he had added 20 pounds. He's going to play defensive tackle. You're like, all right. And Gavin Meyer, you thought, would do that too. Bear Alexander was coming in second group. And we were all sort of shocked because we were arguing, is he the most important player on the team and all of that. Turns out, he's just been coming in the second group. And I don't think that's a step down. I think they're rotating guys a lot. They're playing, somewhat equal snaps. I mean, maybe a little, there's some discrepancy, but not a ton. He played 21 snaps against Michigan. They're regular contributors, but they have Gavin Meyer and Nate Clifton kind of coming in there more. And, there's been some rumblings about why that is. Then we start to see some social media posts, and when, people from the Bear camp are getting involved and they're kind of getting into it with fans. And Connor and I talked about this before we went on the air. We're in the recruiting business for our site, right? We've covered recruiting for years and years and years. And I've just seen it when a high profile former five-star recruit, a five-star recruit comes in, people care about them. They cared about Corey Foreman until he went to Fresno State, and they still want to know what's going on with him. And they, year after year of him not producing, he was still a five-star, and people would fall in love with that, and they want that. Bear Alexander's that guy. He was the high-profile, the one everyone's talking about when USC picked him up. Fans want to see him perform. And when he doesn't, whoever's fault it is, they want someone to be like, hey, why isn't this happening? He should be playing. Maybe he shouldn't. I don't know. Do the coaches know? He's been playing, but he's just not playing the most of any defensive tackle. And the family's come into social media. The people in his camp have talked about it to the point where Lincoln Riley was asked about it a couple of times yesterday, to the point he says, this isn't, there isn't a story there. You guys are looking for something, but we're not looking for something when it's like out there on social media and what is going on. I mean, there was a pretty high profile off-season exchange, I guess.
He entered the portal.
He went into the transfer
portal. Well, he
portal.
didn't technically, but he said he was going to enter the portal publicly.
He said he was going to enter the portal. We were told by sources that USC stepped up NIL, so he was paid to stay, and he did. He's not technically a starter, but I still say he's a big contributor on a very, very good defense now, and he's playing his role, but it's not the superstar of the defense. What maybe a lot of people thought that's what would it be. So I get what Lincoln Riley's trying to do. You're sort of trying to diffuse the situation, but we're still seeing more and more posts from people that are involved from behind the scenes. And, look at tape. We have former players like Deion Bailey and Stuart Cravens coming out. I mean, Deion Bailey just went off. I don't know if he's still doing.
I don't think so. If he's tweeting the way he's tweeting,
he was doing sort of the defensive side of the Keely Your podcast, where Cody Kessler was doing the offensive side. But I think maybe it's just Cody. No, I haven't listened to it lately. But sorry, Keely, but I'll check it out. But I don't think I've seen him on that. But he was very vocal about hey man, if you're not performing, if you're not playing every snap, get the hell out, go hit the portal. He was I don't care. Now he's not, part of the team. He's not a coaching staff or anything, but he was going back to, he's like, USC hasn't had a good defense since 2013. And he said, as I played behind Leonard Williams, that's what a good defensive lineman is, because he made my job easier. He never took a play off. I never saw him loaf or anything like that. So it got kind of personal on social media. I know there's some people in the chat that don't read it, but I don't know if that's a good summary, Connor, to kind of where we are.
Well, on Sunday, I kind of talked about I didn't understand why USC fans were so bent out of shape. And I get it a little bit more. I mean, obviously, I knew about the NIL stuff in the offseason, and if you pay a guy, you want to see him on the field more and contribute. I didn't really see the bad body language on the field that people were talking about. Digging into it a little bit more this week, I don't think he's been the best teammate at practice at times. And this is football. Not everything's going to be perfect. So in my opinion, that really has contributed a little bit to him not playing as much. But I don't think it's something where on the field he's not working hard or he's being this awful teammate. I think there have been times where he's not being the greatest teammate, but it's not like there's anything there where he's going to not play not play his usual rate against Wisconsin. And to Ryan's point about you want those star players that you're so invested in to be on the field and play a lot. This would be a way bigger story, in my opinion, if USC's defense looked like it did last year, and a guy who maybe could really help the team for whatever reason, whether it's the coach's fault, his fault, isn't getting on the field, isn't able to help your group. But USC's defense is much improved, and not everything's perfect. There are going to be decisions in football where you just make the wrong one, and maybe in the offseason if Bear had left, and I think Riley and the staff would have gotten hammered for it, but maybe if he's somewhere else and USC has a better culture situation, are they in a better spot? I disagree with that, but I think people are starting to say that, hey, if he's not going to perform at the level that we expect, then why is he even here in the first place if he's making this NIL money? So I get why fans are frustrated, but it would be a hell of a lot worse if your defense was bad. I trust Riley and the staff to handle the situation well. We'll see what the future looks like. I still think they need Bear. In that first half, Devin Tompkins and Gavin Meyer were the interior defensive linemen on that long Kalel Mullings touchdown. Tompkins didn't play the rest or much of the game after that. I think he only had 5 snaps. He didn't play that very well. Bear, there's still a role for him on this team, and if everyone can get on the same page and maybe there's some apologies that need to happen or something, I still think he's a really, really talented player, as we saw last year. I don't know if he's done anything with the social media stuff that's like, okay, we can't play him. Like, I still think he'll be in the mix. This is just something that happens in football, and now in this era of NIL, people will get more frustrated. I understand it, but let's see what happens in the future. Let's not kind of rush to a judgment right now would be my opinion on it and say, oh, well, this guy can't be on the team. He's not good for our culture. I still think they have a good culture. One guy sort of misbehaving here or there isn't the end of the world. That's just football.
No, I think it is. And the fact that the defense is playing well makes this a lot. I mean, I think that kind of makes it more of a non-story like Lincoln Riley was talking about, but it's still going on. He is a contributor. If he was just riding the pine, that would be one thing. It's just he's not as big of a contributor that maybe many people thought or really wanted him to be. But it's hard to argue when you're getting results. If you're saying, like, if you're the backup field goal kicker and you're like, hey, I should be playing, and the starter makes all of his kicks, you don't have much of an argument, and like this defense is working. But it showed that Bear can be a big part of it too. You're going to be a little disgruntled. I think they got to figure a lot of this stuff internal out.
Let's hope that this doesn't get worse. If it gets worse and things continue and he just starts not playing at all for maybe it's his fault, maybe it's the coach's fault. I mean, if he's not playing at all, I have to put the blame on the player, I think. So if it gets worse, then we can have another conversation. But it seems like this is a situation that Riley and the staff can get everyone on the same page and he can play a role. I also think, Ryan, a little bit, Riley was honest when he said the scheme change hasn't really helped Bear a little bit, and he's still adjusting to. He didn't say that exactly. He said he's still adjusting to the scheme because Shotgun's talked about this a little bit. Bear, what he's so great at is he's really unpredictable, and he has these moves where the offensive lineman might not know exactly what's coming, whereas in Danton Lynn's scheme, he wants those defensive linemen to take on the blocks, and if they can just beat the guy straight up, so be it. But then that opens up holes for the linebackers to come in and make plays. Whereas I think a year ago, and what Bear's so good at is he kind of freestyles a little bit and makes the play on his own terms at times. And I don't think he's being coached that way anymore. So maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah, I think it's like I'm not the most technical, but like a two-gap thing where you do take on the blocker, and it could be either gap where if it's one gap, you're sort of like, I'm going between the guard and the center or whatever it is, and you're sort of taking that. And but yeah, there's options, but he's going to tie somebody up and then it should free. And we haven't seen the linebackers really be playmakers for years around you, and now they are. Now they're making plays, and I think it starts with the way the guys are playing up front. So maybe you're not getting the accolades, but you're doing your job, and then people behind you can make it, can make your job, can make the play. And I think that's what Deion Bailey was talking about somewhat too. I
guess overall, like, I understand the frustration from fans where this guy is high profile. This guy wanted more money or he was going to enter the portal and they gave it to him. Like, you want to see the results there, and it's probably his fault, quote unquote, that he's not on the field. So I get the frustration, but like, I feel like it could get a lot worse and it could also get better. We're still in the middle of this situation. So the people who are like, get him off the team, he's, this is terrible, look at his bad attitude. Like, I predicted them to go 7-5. They're doing way better than I ever thought. Like, this is something that they can overcome. And even if he wasn't in the picture, I still feel like the defense is really, really good. So let's give Riley and the staff some time to get everyone on the same page. And if it's fixable, it'll be fixable, and he'll play a role going forward. I don't know why people are so quick to rush to judgments like, oh, he's killing this locker room, he's not good for the culture. The culture seems really good to me. The team seems really good to me. If USC was 0-3 and this was happening, it would be totally different. This is something I think they can get past and get everyone aligned and still have a good outcome, I think.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing the NIL world before. If a player wasn't performing, he wasn't sort of eating up resources outside of why did he make why was he on scholarship? You could that could have been the argument. Now it's like, hey, we put a bunch of, like, fans will go, we put a bunch of money to him, and it could have got an offensive tackle or something where we wanted to re-sign Bear, and now he's not performing. So now it's like contracts now where people are like, why did, we see this in the NBA, like probably the worst contracts in any professional sports, like the NBA ones, they sign guys to like $60 million and they're terrible and it's guaranteed forever and all that stuff. We're starting to see that creep into college football now. And even the situation at UNLV, Jaden Bayava comes to USC. Their quarterback comes in from Holy Cross. Like, he's completing like 50% of his passes, but UNLV's 3-0 with two, I think, Power 4 wins. And he's going to redshirt and sit out. And there's a controversy between his camp and his agent and UNLV and their collective and all that. And it comes out that it was actually a handshake agreement and not a whatever. Like, they're saying that wasn't anything was in writing about this $100,000 contract, that he's sitting out for it. And UNLV's coming back. And these are going to be things that are happening in college football because money is involved. And it's just sort of, we've never had to deal with this stuff before. If some bagman was paying a kid to go to Mississippi State or whatever, and he wasn't starting, like, he can't go to the courts and say, hey, this is, a breach of contract. You weren't supposed to pay the kid in the first place. Now you're allowed to pay him. And I'm curious to see how some of these contract disputes and players kind of taking their ball and going home and not playing and all that, it goes forward. And but now that money's involved and it's legal, you're going to see stuff like this happen.
Well, to your point about fans' frustration, if you donated a lot to House of Victory and you feel screwed by this, I understand it. But, like, don't be mad at the situation. Be mad at, like, the current state of affairs in college football. Like, contracts in pro sports, to your point, Ryan, you can sign guys to big deals. Not everyone lives up to their contract. So if you're a fan who's like, oh, I was a part of this and this guy isn't living up to his contract, I'm mad. Like, be more mad at the system. The fact that you even have to pay that money in the first place, I think, is ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, you can get that way because you're all like owners or whatever. Like they're all, it's like a collective. They own the team or something like that. But but I agree with you as far as the most important thing is the defense is playing well. He's still contributing, and you can make this right. But I think this is more of an internal thing. Can you ask Bears camp to not tweet out, look at the tape and free 90 and all that kind of stuff?
My son is the best defensive tackle and 91 isn't as good as it. Like, that's not helping it.
No, that's not helping.
That's not helping Bear either. Like, Dion is right. Like, NFL people will see that and be like, okay, maybe we have a blank round grade on this guy, but if his dad is going to be like this, then we'll drop him on our board. Like, people get dropped all the time for stuff like that. If the talent isn't like crazy good, if he was out there, 3 sacks a game, like can't be blocked, you put up with it. But he has not done well enough for that situation to not diminish his stock, in my opinion.
Yeah, you don't want anything hurting your stock like that. Yeah. And there's just little it's like pros and cons, and you're like. Then there was the situation where his camp was tweeting about why he wasn't playing enough, and like that's just not going to help you at the next level. Who was the Georgia defensive lineman that like he had some pretty bad some of the car incidents he was involved with, and I think he dropped significantly, but was like top 5 talent, but had to fall out of that.
The guy in the Eagles.
Yeah, I think the Eagles drafted all. Yeah, maybe it was Carter. Yeah, I don't know. But I think he still went pretty high, but I don't think
but
he went as high as he was going to. And I mean, that's a major, like, I think someone died in that, like that, if I'm recalling that correctly. But I'm just saying any little thing, not that was a little thing, those things they're going to try to find reasons not to spend millions of dollars on you. You don't want to give them reasons. And this is a reason that some team might not spend millions of dollars on you. So I think it's in everyone's best interest to just do what Lincoln Riley said and make it a non-story. But the reason it's a story is not because we're all digging around for it. It's out there on social media.
Yeah, the outside noise was created by someone on the inside. So when that happens, that's a story.
Yeah.
I was going to answer. Can you put Lamont's thing back up?
Let me put it back up.
He said sorry, I've seen nothing but Bear has done since he came to USC that makes him think he should be catered to. I understand that. Last year was last year, but I just go back to the Cal game where he was suspended for that first half because of the targeting penalty against Utah the week before. And what did Jade not do? Run for like 200 yards in the first half. And then USC's defense was not very good in the second half again, but they slowed down the run a little bit more with Bear in the middle. And Riley even acknowledged it yesterday after practice. He said, last year we weren't very good as a defensive line, and it was easy to play. Like, the competition was easy. Bear was in there because he was clearly the best player, Riley inferred. And now he said this year it's a lot harder to play. So to that point, I get what Lamont is saying, but I do think last year he proved why he deserved to be catered to and why he ultimately was catered to by this coaching staff. They felt like they really, really needed him because of last season, and it's hard to argue with him because of that. I do think what he did last year ultimately made it so the staff felt like they needed to cater to him. So I disagree with the comment a little bit.
HR Pickens stuff says Michael Pittman's pops called out Helton for his son's playing time. Gentry took a shot at Grinch for playing time. Bear Pops didn't do anything different. Here's the difference. The offense was terrible and then the defense was terrible. And so the parents are complaining. I think it makes much more sense. The defense has been really good, and Bear's still contributing and being a part of it.
I mean, it does come off as a little selfish when they're playing really well and he's like, free me.
Yeah. And, I think, to be fair, Pittman and Gentry's parents, they were right. I'm not necessarily agreeing, and maybe he could play more, but I think, to me, just feeling like there's some things that were there's some stuff that's in Bear's control with some of the playing time, and maybe it's a game, there's egos being involved. I'm not sure, but I feel like some of this stuff is in his control. I mean, Pittman should have been playing, and Clay Helton was not a strong, head coach, and sort of buckled to that kind of pressure. I mean, was Eric Gentry completely right about Alex Grinch? And he's made the most, I guess, not subtle comments about, hey, we're better because of coaching and stuff. He was right. You can't argue, I think, with some of those guys. Pittman's in the NFL. It's hard to argue with those. So that's what the HR pick stuff, that would be the difference for me.
And with USC, they did give up those 3 explosive runs, but who's to say if Bear was in there that it's only 3 plays, whereas with Eric Gentry last year, it's okay, the defense was so bad on all these plays. Eric wasn't in enough. How could he not make a difference? With Bear, I think the jury's out. If he was in there, would they still have run for those touchdowns? He was in on that really long fourth quarter touchdown. So I don't think you can explicitly say if he's in, this doesn't happen. Whereas with Michael Pittman, if he's playing, he's freaking on the Colts. He's their best receiver. Of course that guy's going to help you. And Eric Gentry last year, of course that guy's going to help you. I think there's an argument that Bear certainly could help USC, but it wasn't he wasn't playing in the game and Michigan went off. He was in on one of the big runs too. So I don't think he's completely not at fault either.
Yeah, I think there was one. I think Dion there was the argue for tape, and Dion Bailey put up it looked like a loaf from Bear or something. And there was just, you don't need that stuff kind of going.
And
back
I don't know,
forth.
that was tough. It doesn't look good, but I have a hard time really faulting Bear for that, especially when USC missed 2 tackles on that play. And if those guys, Humphrey and Ramsey, bring them down, Mullings, we're not even having this conversation right now, probably because USC keeps winning.
Yeah. Real quick before we go to break and get some questions in, Cam is talking about can't wait for the revenge Grinchy game. And this, to me, what is important about this game? And maybe this is me sort of being petty or whatever when you're talking about this. USC's defense being as good as it is, arguably the best side of the ball for USC this year so far, even in the defeat against Michigan. I mean, they didn't get 20 points. You should win that game. 3 plays basically they gave up. That nothing like you've seen before. That should be enough to go. The roster talent-wise is not much different than it was last year. I mean, it's pretty close. You would maybe you could argue some guys or whatever. They're playing so much better. It's significantly better. They pitched a freaking shutout. They've played 2 ranked teams, and they've haven't given up over 30 points. Right? I mean, was it 24 and 27?
They've given up 5 touchdowns in 3 games against 2 ranked teams, and last year they gave up 4 touchdowns against freaking San Jose State in the opener. It's night and day. It's
night and day. So do you need this to be a revenge game against Alex Grinch? Not really, but it would be nice to see USC put up a 50-burger and then just be and Eric Gentry just going, I've seen that, but I was on the wrong side of it. I think it would probably be good for morale. I have no idea if there's I think there's bad blood between some players from what they've said, but I think your defense being so much better is sort of good enough, but there are some opportunities there. Tackett Curtis was he better than Eric Gentry? Does Gentry want to play well and show off? I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I think there was. I think Shotgun was talking about this on the Helium Boys podcast. We saw a lot of Eric Gentry against Michigan, because they didn't do nickel as much because Michigan wasn't going to throw the ball. You already mentioned Wisconsin's strength is the slot receiver, so you're going to see more Greedy Vance, but you got to figure out a way to get Eric Gentry on the field. And I think their comment was, or maybe it was Chris's comment about maybe they could add, like, if it's the Wisconsin offense trying to figure out a way to get Eric Gentry off the field, just ask Alex Grinch, because he was able to do it last year. I thought that was kind of funny. So yeah, there might be some juices flowing in this one. We'll see. But I think if you're a USC fan, just sort of be happy your defense is good. You know what's different. The only thing that changed, if you remember when Paul Hackett got fired and Pete Carroll came up, and second year Pete Carroll is in the Orange Bowl, and Paul Hackett, who got fired after 3 years, made the comment that he had a 5-year plan. That's not Alex Grinch isn't going to be like, oh yeah, we were building up to this year and it was going to be great. No, that's not what it was. Pete Carroll was just a way better head coach than Paul Hackett, and Danton Lynn is just a way better defensive coordinator than Alex Grinch. So you got the guy you want, at least for this year. I would be happy with that. There's my little rant.
I'm with you, man.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and answer some questions. All right, we're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. I can tell when we're running a little long because Connor's just not going to say anything. He's like, we got to move on. No. Yeah, he's got to go to practice. So no, I get it. That's a lot of times you'll chime in and oh, he's not saying anything. Okay, I get it. That's true, right? I
guess a little bit.
We were there.
Shotgun texted our group, and I was responding to him, so I got a little.
Oh, no worries about that. We had one voicemail for the Helium Boys, but Chris wasn't doing it in studio, so he didn't get it. He was going to try. It's not going to be good next week, so we'll play it for you guys, even though it's for the Helium Boys. We'll try to answer in our best Chris and shotgun mode.
Hello, POCfootball.com. This is Giovanni Tejada calling from the 562. This question is for the Helium Boys. So where do we go from here, right? That's the real question. Obviously, tough loss on Saturday versus Michigan. But do you think the team recovers and does well versus Wisconsin, or do you think there'll be a hangover from a tough loss from last Saturday? Look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks, and fight on.
Where do they go from here? Keep doing what you're doing defensively. Start there. And then on the offensive side of the ball, where do you go from here? Figure out the best offensive line group. Figure out your best five. Maybe does that include Elijah Paige at left tackle? Does that include Mason Murphy at left tackle? Where's Tobias Raymond? Figure out your tackles first and foremost. Does Mason Murphy maybe play right guard if that gives you a better chance to win over Alani Noah? I don't know if that is in USC's best interest, but that's something that's been talked about. So figure out the offensive line. And then honestly, Ryan, I think it's a lot of just keep doing what you're doing. People were frustrated with Lincoln Riley's play calling, so he'll look at the tape and he'll make some adjustments. And no one's a harsher critic on himself than Lincoln Riley, so he'll adjust, like I said. But to me, keep doing what you're doing defensively, figure out the offensive line, and I still think this team can win a lot of games.
No, I agree with you. It's sort of like, hey, I like the game plan. Outside of the pass protection stuff. But if you're if you're the Golden State Warriors head coach, and you're Steve Kerr, and you got you ran a bunch of plays that got Steph Curry wide open threes, and he missed a bunch of them, and you lost. Are you going to change the game plan and be like, okay, we got to do something else? No, I'm going to go with if I'm finding ways to get him open, then I'm going to keep doing that. And I think you love what happened on defense outside of those 3 plays, and I think that USC is going to keep doing what you're doing, do it a little bit better, and you'll be fine. So I think we're both pretty optimistic about this team's chances. And, put a good showing this weekend against your former DC, Tackett Curtis, CJ Williams, Bertram, the punter, who's been good, I guess. He's been a good punter. Let's go to Jeff, the math teacher in Fountain Valley, refusing to run the ball with the lead at 4 minutes left, calling exclusively 5 10-yard pass plays with 41 seconds left and the whole field to go. Lincoln Riley is not an offensive genius. I'm tired of hearing about his track record. He single-handedly lost the game. Whoa, okay. The players and fans deserve accountability. Is USC better this year? Yes. Will there ever be a lead under Riley? Not unless he swallows his pride and starts doing the simple, basic, time-tested things that win football games. It's not his job to outsmart everyone. It's his job to win. Shame on me for getting my hopes up and thinking he was starting to change his ways. Jeff, the math teacher. I know, to have 3 #1 overall picks, more than any head coach ever, and 3 Heisman trophies and all those conference championships and playoff appearances. He's just not that good, Connor. I don't know what people are saying. I don't care about his track record. Okay, so you're mad at one game, and so anything he's ever done is now doesn't make sense. Like, those dudes put up huge numbers. So many different types of quarterbacks. All of them put up huge numbers. And I don't know what to tell you. I get there's some people who just don't like Riley. I'm not saying he's the greatest head coach, he's the worst, whatever, but he's not as bad as some people are making out. They're just taking out their frustrations and just like, oh, he sucks. And it's like, that's clearly not the case.
When comparing him to what Steve Sarkisian did against Michigan, did he stack up as well? No, of course not. He didn't have as good of a day calling plays as Texas did, but he's still in. I mean, he might be the best play caller in the country, and if he's not, he's in that group with Sarkisian, with Lane Kiffin, with just the best play callers in the nation. And if you don't want that guy leading your team, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I think they really can become a lead at some point. The offensive line, is that a concern? Yeah, but the defense is a lot better. Let's see what happens the rest of this season. I don't get the frustrations other than, like, okay, was he great with some of these play calls? No, but, I mean, USC, for 2 out of the 3 weeks they've played, they've been the most watched team in town, in the country. That LSU game by itself, I think that was the most watched game of the weekend, and then this past weekend, it was the most watched game of the weekend on any network. Like, comparing him to Clay Helton, it's low-hanging fruit, but, like, USC's in the game. Like,
it's so dumb when people do that.
They're in the spotlight. People really care about USC, that the team is good. Like, does Riley have his faults? Yes, but I don't understand people who say, like, they can never be elite. They were pretty damn close to elite his first year. I think they're trending towards elite here if they can figure out the offensive line, and it's never going to be perfect, but they're in just such a way better position than they've been since probably, the Rose Bowl season for USC?
Even they lost 3 games.
Yeah.
They got blown out in that year. So
they started, 1-3? Like, you have to go back and look at, like, they're relevant, which when Clay Helton was here, USC was not relevant for a long, long time. So I just don't get all the hate. I can get being frustrated with them. USC was a play away from beating Michigan on the road. But to say that they're never going to truly be elite, that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
No, and he called out his own play calling on that. ISJST is all caps in the chat all over the place. He says, what does #1 overall picks and Heisman's have to do with national championship?
Has USC ever made the college football playoff? Like,
they've never made the playoff.
Come on.
Put his resume next to every coach that USC has hired in the last century. Okay, just write down what Lincoln Riley had accomplished in college. Write it down. Just take a piece of paper. Here's what he's done. The stuff that you think doesn't matter. Everything that he's done, if there's a bad loss, whatever you want to do, write down his resume. Compare it to every single person USC hired in the last 100 years since Howard freaking Jones. They hired him away from Yale, I believe. He has a better resume. He's accomplished more in college football than anyone USC's hired in 100 years. So you want to compare him to national, like, is he Nick Saban? No, he's not Nick Saban. He's only 40 years old. Like, he could get there. I mean, being Nick Saban would be tough. Kirby Smart, whatever. Like, there is like a handful of coaches. Are you comparing him to them and say he sucks compared to Nick Saban? Like, well, everyone does. Kirby Smart is 1-5 against Nick Saban, and he's got the best program in the country. That's what you're going to compare it to. People do that. Oh, he's like Clay Helton made his mistakes. Like, you're insane if you're trying to even make that comparison. We're not saying he's the greatest coach ever, but holy cow, he's done a lot for a 40-year-old coach, and he's got a ways to go. And have they won a national championship? No, but USC hasn't been relevant for a long time. The Pete Carroll years are a long time ago. We're talking 20 years ago. Reggie Bush was running on the sideline. So I don't get it. Like, if you don't like it, that's fine. But you can't make these hyperbolic, oh, he's just freaking terrible. It's like, I just hit your camera. I'm getting animated here. No. So, sorry. You are completely wrong, and I have nothing else.
You know what does have to do with winning national championships? Playing elite defense. And the team, for the first time in Riley's tenure, is finally doing that. So that's a surefire step in the right direction. Has the offense been perfect? No. But let's give him a chance. It's only been 3 games. The team still has a chance to make the college football playoff. I think we saw, pretty clearly this past weekend, is USC in Texas's class? No. But they lost a game to a team that's pretty firmly in tier 2, in my opinion, in Michigan. USC is very much in that second tier, which we talked about last week, Ryan. They haven't been close to that in a while.
Lincoln Riley has 0 national championships. So does 99% of the head coaches in the world. Like, what? I mean, I don't know how you're comparing that. He's like, are you saying he's better than Pete Carroll? No, I'm saying he had a way better resume than Pete Carroll did when he got hired by USC. Pete Carroll was a failed NFL coach. He got fired both places he was at.
Only 3 head coaches in college football right now have national championships.
Yes. So, like, if that's who you're going to compare it to,
Kirby Smart, Mac Brown, Dabo Swinney, I'd take Riley over 2 of those other guys
and
right
Mac
now.
Brown
That's
is
for sure.
awful.
Yeah.
Like he just gave up 70 to James Madison. So, like, holy cow! Like you think he's not? If he hasn't won a national championship yet, he sucks. Like, okay, who are you going to get? So you're going to hire
Kirby Smart,
I guess, or Dabo. So there's 3, right? What is it? Kirby,
Mac Brown, and Dabo.
Yeah. And both Dabo and Mac Brown are awful right now. Like Dabo,
Clemson's rebounded a little bit, but
they're playing better.
Yeah.
But he won't get guys out of the portal. He's never winning a championship again. Like, that's not happening. Mac Brown is not winning a championship again. The only dude ever is Kirby Smart. So he's not Kirby Smart. I'm sorry, he's not Kirby Smart. Maybe he could get there. Kirby's only got 2 national titles, only 2. He's going to get more. He's freaking really good. He's using Nick Saban's pattern, but your comparison is like he hasn't won a championship, so he sucks. Then everybody sucks, is what we're saying here.
He's a hell of a lot better than everyone else USC could have had when he was hired, that's for sure. And it all goes back to what we've said all along. Even last year when they were playing like crap in the second half of the season, yes, Riley deserves a lot of blame. This season's been bad, but you just have to hope that a guy like him figures it out because you're not going to do any better than him, and that's the reality.
Yeah. All right.
Him or bust.
Yeah. So, sorry, buddy, but I just can't let you, I get it. You love under center and fullbacks and student body left. That's fine. But this is a whole new world of college football. I think Lincoln Riley's made a bunch of mistakes, but he's also done a bunch of good things. And he had to fix a lot of problems. That's where you need to give him credit, because the dysfunction of not just the athletic department, but the way the coaching hires were going, he had to fix a lot of stuff. And you can be critical, and we have been critical of stuff he's done.
Yeah, they haven't recruited well enough on the offensive line, and it cost him against Michigan. That's on him.
They were slow.
Does he suck and deserve to get fired because of that? No.
Yeah, that's some dumb stuff there. All right, my little rant there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Some people are really liking it there. Stephen Poway. Yeah, and this is my show, so I can say what the hell I want. That's good.
That's true.
Get your own show if you want to say what you want. Stephen Poway. I've noticed this for a while now, but why don't players wear their mouthpieces in their mouths on each play, or even at least one play per game? I say either wear it or leave it off your face mask. Back in the day, we were required to wear them, and they protected my teeth. That would make sense. I don't know. I noticed Zach Branch loves to have his mouthpiece attached to his face mask, and it dangles around out there. Probably even is blocking his vision at times. Lots of players do that. Is there a rule that they have to have the mouthpiece on their person at all times? I thought we might have brought this up with Coach Harvey Hyde. Did we bring this up before?
Yeah, a lot of older people really care about the mouth guards. I'd say that's a question for Google.com. Why?
Yeah,
I don't not wear who cares?
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care.
Sorry, Steve. I know Steve emails in a lot, and I thank you for the feedback. But
I either forgot to delete it, or we brought it up we brought this up before, because I was like, if you want to paddleboard out here behind us in the Redondo Harbor, you have to have the life jacket on your paddleboard. You don't have to be wearing it. So maybe it's something like that. You just have to have it, and wear it or not. They just say you need to have one. Maybe that's the case. I don't know.
Mouth guard talk. I don't know.
Yeah,
man.
we don't need it. But Connor's got to get the practice.
No, it's not.
I've already did a bunch of rants.
It's not even that.
No, I know it's true. But I might have forgot to delete that one. Brian in Birmingham, Beham. This question goes out to anyone. I had questions in regards to Elijah Paige and if our offensive line would be something to worry about later in the season after the LSU game where he spent half the night in Miller Moss's lap. After the Michigan loss, do you see him losing his starting spot, or are they going to stick with him? Great
question. We're not able to see a lot of practice, as has been well documented. So yesterday we were looking at the offensive line. They just weren't doing any first team, second team stuff. So if I was in charge, I would see where Elijah's head's at. And if it's clear that he has no confidence right now, I think you got to bench him. But if he responds well this week in practice, there's a reason he earned that left tackle job. He's, in their heads, the best left tackle outside of probably Jonah on the team. even though he didn't look like it against Michigan. So if he responds well, I'd continue to ride with him at left tackle. But if he has no confidence right now and it's clear that he needs a little bit more time to figure some things out, I don't think you can. So it all depends on how he responds, I'd say.
I agree with you there. Tino from Rancho. Tina, I'm sorry, not Tino. Tina.
Tina.
We don't get as many female questions, so I want to make sure I got it right. Don't change Tina to Tino. Hey, Ryan, good coverage and analysis of the game from you and the team. Do you think we'll see more Kyle Ford moving forward because of his sure hands and good route running? That's our first question.
I think we'll see more of Jay Fair with Mekhi Lemon being out for a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of his spot, right?
Let me look here. Kyle Ford played also 20 snaps, so maybe he just didn't get open as much. And Moss was constantly under pressure, so I can't really speak to why Kyle Ford wasn't more involved in the offense in this one. But I could see Jay Fair, after having a touchdown catch and making a big third down play, getting more involved in the offense. But I'm somewhat surprised to see Fair and Ford play the same amount of snaps on offense, 20 each. So that makes me think that Ford will have a role going forward too, and maybe he just wasn't as open, or maybe Moss was pressured on some plays that were designed for him.
2, she says, if teams take the Michigan approach, I'm sorry, that was just an abrupt ending to your like,
yeah, sorry. No, I just was laughing.
I was like, your sentence just sort of like, when you talk, and people don't do this on radio
it gets
very much.
Predictable.
You sort of want to, like, there's like a tone that you set, and then you kind of know it sounds like it's the end of what you're going to say. And then sometimes it's just like, and that was like a more, and I was like, okay. But the second part of the question is, if teams take the Michigan approach, do you see Miller roll out more and use his legs? Thanks and always fight on, from Tina.
What's the Michigan approach that she's referring to? Just like getting a lot of pressure?
I guess.
You can't really roll out if you're running for your life because of good edge rushers. That was probably the scariest thing for me. Like I know Josiah Stewart, he played so well, and maybe he's a first-round NFL pick now, but it seems like the USC tackles, they're so big that they can slow down the bigger edge rushers, but the smaller, quicker guys, and don't look now, Ryan, but Alex Grinch's speed defense is coming to town. I say that in jest. Yeah. But there's like a blueprint now with those tackles. Not everyone is as good as Josiah Stewart, of course, but if you're a smaller edge rusher who has speed, like USC's tackles did not do well against those guys. So I don't know if Miller can roll out against a smaller but quicker edge rusher, because he just won't have as much time for that to develop.
I would like to see him keep the ball on some of those handoff, the
options.
Yeah, the options there. He's getting hit anyway. Like let him run a little bit. I think he can do that, and you can loosen things up a little bit. We have a pretty big naysayer in the chat, B. Mason. Everyone has a blueprint to beat us. We showed every weapon. We showed every weakness. Both lines are chonky. Okay, I don't know what that is. Slow and don't adjust. Our QB chokes when harassed. Oh my God, this is like such a terrible take. And we still can't tackle. Expect 2 to 4 more losses. I mean, I couldn't disagree with you more. He said, after the spring game, I knew we were doomed, but maybe we're just an 8-win team. Lowered expectations. Sicken me. This is 16 straight years of being completely irrelevant. Completely wrong there. The only big dance we're going to be is a Sun Bowl where UNLV will beat us. Okay. Holy cap, B. Mason. Like, I mean, I don't want to go in too long on this, but I think you're just not seeing the big picture here, that USC went to Michigan against the defending national champs in front of 110,000 people, played a C game, and played good for like 28 minutes and should have won. You looking at the people on USC's schedule, are you seeing 3 or 4 more losses? I am not, but I guess you are. Come back. We'll keep receipts. And, 3 or 4 more losses, I'll say, you know what? That B. Mason, he was right. I don't think he's going to be right.
No, and the defensive line, I still think, is a really big part of the success of the season. I mean, LSU couldn't run the ball. Michigan, they had those 3 big runs, and people will be tired of, outside of those 3 big runs, they were great, but that's the reality. Like, they weren't just great. They were, like, exceptional outside of those 3 big runs. So I disagree with them on the defensive line, and everyone knows my preseason predictions, so I saw more losses coming before the year started, but I don't know how possibly you could watch these first 3 games and think, okay, this team is in trouble and this team doesn't have a higher floor than I thought before the year. Like, the defense just is going to keep USC in every game, in my opinion. I would be shocked if they were blown out. I'd be shocked at this point if they, 9-3, I kind of think is where they'll be.
That's like
floor.
More
pessimistic. I mean, 8-4 is probably the floor if you have some injuries and the line is as bad as it was against Michigan. But I mean, 10-2, I think is certainly realistic, and we'll see what happens. Am I going to predict them now to win out the rest of the year? No, but I mean, it's not out of the question.
Yeah.
I don't know why there's so much pessimism after you were one play away from beating Michigan. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
We're not even playing well. I don't know who this person is. Jack, which of the remaining road trips are you most excited for now that Michigan is past? Oh, Jack Smith. Do we know him? I've seen him before. I remember, he's like a Twitter guy or something. Oh, wait, does he work here? Yeah.
I was most excited for Michigan, of course. I mean, the Maryland trip will be fun because we'll be with Chris and he'll know all the spots. I'm not really looking forward to that long flight, but I guess I'd say the Maryland trip.
Yeah, me too. My sister's there. We're going to stay with her. That'll be cool. But I'm going to see friends from college in Minnesota. And I always love going to Seattle. So I think all of them.
Yeah, the Seattle, that stadium on the water, I'm excited to see that too.
Yeah,
for sure.
we got to set up. So we'll put this out there now. Any USC fans, if you have a boat going to the game, we need to come to your sailgate. We got to set up some kind of sailgating thing. So I did it once. We did like a video report. God, this might have been like 6 years ago. And we went on a bunch of different boats and it was a lot of fun. So that was good. One of our other pessimists, or the Lincoln Riley hater, should Jaden Biava be used at a run option when USC gets the lead and needs to run the ball to bleed clock? I think they should. He's 6'6", 220 pounds. You still have a pass threat with him. That
at least is a take that makes sense. Not that his other ones didn't make sense. I get it. No national championships. You're not good, but that I think is a little bit more reasoned. It's just Riley has always said all along, I'm only going to use one quarterback. And Miller, in my opinion, has exceeded my expectations. So I don't think he's anywhere close to even, people starting to think about him losing his job. Like the fact that we're even entertaining that is crazy. And the question isn't about him losing his job. It's about Jaden playing. But I just don't think so. Riley has never used two quarterbacks. He's been on the record this year saying, no, that's not going to happen. Miller's doing really well, in my opinion. I don't see it.
Yeah, and it's not a video game, so you're just like, oh, we're going to swap out. Like, he's the leader of the team. I think it takes something to take him out of a game. So I don't see Lincoln Riley doing that. He said he's not going to do it, so I don't think you're going to see it. And then Lamont, what the hell is Reggie Bush doing? This isn't the way we be welcomed back into the fold. Do you think this jeopardizes him leading the team onto the field this year? Yeah, I was told it was going to happen, and it didn't happen. So I don't think he's going to be leading the team on the field this year when you're suing the school. So I haven't dug into this too much. If you have any thoughts on it, or not really, or
not really. I mean, it's pretty clear. Like, you sue the school, you're not going to run out of the tunnel with them. So I don't know. I think all along, like, was he done dirty by the NCAA? Yeah, but like, since that's happened, has Reggie done everything perfectly? No. He's made some mistakes too. And I mean, hey, if he wins a bunch of money from this case, like, I'm not going to be like, oh, he made the wrong choice. But in the moment right now, you just had this big win. Like, why are you going back through this whole thing again? That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I'm sure he has his reasons, and if he gets a lot of money from it, then so be it. But to me, I don't know. At some point, like, can you just move on? I feel like he's still doing well enough financially. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but he's got to be doing pretty well. So I don't really understand why he, like, let's just move on would be what I say.
It's not a good look. And Lance in the chat said, don't you have to include all parties in cases like these? I think that's, someone had told that to me. I really haven't dug into this, where like, you can't sue the NCAA unless you're suing USC also or something. But still, it's just not do you really want to do that? Like, you just came back. I felt like everything was all positive, and now it's just like, ugh. So I don't know. I don't like I hate lawsuit stuff. I don't want to be dealing with lawyers if you don't have to. And this seems like something that was avoidable. One last one. Cam, Ryan, what's your handicap? And where do you like to play golf around LA County? I made 15 right now, but I played Big Rec Park yesterday, and it was awful. I played pretty good on the back nine, but I don't know. I go to Golf Shack here, and I hit balls in the simulator. I like doing that. But I don't have like we play in Long Beach a lot because there's a bunch of courses down there. Do you have your handicap, Connor? Or do you know? Or
whatever the max is.
I do like playing, but I feel like I go in there and I'm hitting balls in the simulator and practicing. I'm like, oh, this looks good. And then I go out to the course and it's like completely different. But I guess that's golf. All right. Well, that's going to wrap things up. We got to let Connor get off to practice. Any final thoughts? Too many rants for me?
No. Final thought. I think this week against Wisconsin, the other W school, is going to tell us a lot. And if USC comes out, covers that 14-point spread, looks really good, there's a lot to be excited about. If the offensive line is still giving you trouble and Wisconsin hangs into the game into the second half, then I think the concerns that we have leaving Michigan, we probably will still feel pretty bad about. But to me, this is an opportunity for USC to right the ship. And after that LSU game, they had all that momentum. They continue that against Utah State. This is a chance to get all that momentum back. And I really think that unless something that I don't expect occurs, they should get all the momentum back, because I think this team, like I've said all along since they started playing, is a lot better than I anticipated.
Yeah. So if you don't listen to the Podcast of Champions, we'll do our previews tomorrow. But I wanted to play you. We have 2 sounds. People created sounds for us for Wisconsin. We have a sound for every school. This is a Wisconsin sound.
Wisconsin Badgers.
So that's one of our listeners, and then his wife, like, who knew nothing about any of the schools, basically he just said, do a Badger sound. So that's like what she did. And then we had someone try to do a more like realistic one.
Wisconsin Badgers.
Yeah, but there's our Badger
Nice.
sounds. David Woods would go Badger, 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 Badger. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Good stuff. We'll let Connor get over to practice. I am Ryan Abraham, and he is Mr. Triple Double himself, Connor Morrissette. Really appreciate everyone coming in on the chat and listening across the different podcast platforms. Again, try to leave us a 5-star review if you can. If you're not a member of USCFootball.com, go check it out. 30% off annual membership. You will not be disappointed, and you will be like, why wasn't I doing this before? So much great stuff going on there. Lots of great content. Connor putting up a lot of it himself, so we appreciate him. Appreciate all of you. Hope you enjoy the show. Enjoy the game this weekend, and we will talk to you next time.